Okay. I think we should start. My name is Daniel Nordgård. I'm from the University of Agder in Norway. I am an associate professor. I teach music business and management, and I also do my research on digitalization and on music business. I thought I should just to start with to give a big thank you to the organizers, to Kursrim, for inviting me to this great event. Ever since I got here, I've been taken so well care of. I've had the chance to speak at a few conferences before, and I think, hands down, this is by far the best organized and best hospitality that I've ever been to, so well done. All right, so I used to be a musician. Before I started teaching and do research, I used to be a musician. I used to be a touring artist. I used to be a recording artist. I used to tour Europe and Northern America and of course Norway. And we released a couple of albums. When I did this, I also worked with a festival. I worked with Norway's biggest festival at that time, called the Court Festival. And I used to be the problem solver. So they had a specific task which was just called the problem solver. So whatever happened, whatever type of trouble or problems that occurred, me and my colleague, we had the task of trying to figure it out and try to solve it for, almost by any means necessary. I left the festival, and then in 2007, I was invited back in. I was hired to do two things. One was to get rid of a deficit of 1.5 million euros, and the other one was to find someone to lead it, to manage it, to run it. And in that process, I ended up being the manager, the festival manager. And so the poster there with Gramart, Barclay and Kings of Leon is the first and last festival that I ever booked and managed. We had to shut it down due to ticket sales. And after that, my band fell apart and I left music altogether. And I went into academia and I took a doctorate degree in digitalization of music business. And one of the things that I've been specializing these last couple of years is streaming economics, and how streaming economics impacts music business and artists and labels and managers and everyone else, economic and revenue streams. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to try and shed a little light on how that works. For some of you, this may be new, and for some of you, it may not be new. You may know this before, but I'm going to try and do a couple of things. I'm going to say some issues around streaming, about how the streaming revenues work. I'm going to tell a little bit about the case of Norway, because it's interesting, because Norway was very early in adopting streaming, so there's some things to be learned from that. I'm going to talk about the economic model that streaming builds upon, the paradox of choice, and ARPU, average revenue per user. And then I'm going to try and see a little bit into the future and give you a little bit of hints of what I think or where I think music business is heading. All right, and also, when I do get a little excited about stuff that I talk about, I tend to talk a little fast. So if I do talk too fast, can someone just please give me a sign, slow down, or just yell if I can't see you? All right, so first of all, when we talk about music streaming, it's extremely important to underline the fact that it has a tremendous positive thing. It has brought money back into recorded music. And since 2007, I've been managing a select group, a small international conference for invites only. It's taking place in Kristiansand, Norway. And it's on an executive CEO level, and we've had the European Union sit in to observe, we've had the OECD sit in to observe, WIPO to sit in to observe. And in those meetings, since 2007, they've been struggling with trying to figure out how to work digitalization, how to solve issues with rights, licenses, and economics, etc., etc. And I was so fortunate to being allowed to record all those sessions, and that is what I built my doctorate dissertation on, to analyze those dialogues. And if we listen to the dialogues and the conversations they had in 2007 up until 2010, it was a very depressed group of people, like semi-suicidal. They were literally saying, we're dying. The industry that we had is dead, it's over. And we have to figure out something else to do. And there were only three options on the table that they were discussing at the time. One was to have a levy-based, which means that the government pays for it. The other one was to have a bundled model, which means that you pay for it through ads or through something else, like Nokia comes with music or like a telecom subscription. And the other one was an ad-based with commercials. None of them really talked about a streaming model or something that involved everyone to pay 10 euros a month or $10 a month or whatever the currency is. They might have talked about it, or they might have dreamt about it, but that wasn't an option at the table at the time. Now, when streaming came along, it reintroduced an economic value with an affectionate value, which is extremely important. And it's the evidence of the effect of it is very easy to see. This is the IFPI numbers globally, and the red one is recorded physical, and the dark blue is streaming income. So it is the single most important part in how recorded music is recovering economically. Now, that is only one part of that story. And in 2013, because Norway was very early in adopting streaming, there were discussions on how that money was being redistributed. So who benefited from that rise? And the Norwegian government set down a committee which has my name to it, because I was given the task to lead it. The Nordgård committee. I'm really, really happy about it. And we were given the task to find out a couple of things. One was to see who benefited from this rise, and the other one was who was losing out. Like, what were the major dynamics in the new streaming economy? Academically, it was also, for me personally, a general interest in trying to figure out, like Marvin Gaye would say, what is going on? So what is it that is going on right now? Why are we seeing this? And there were a lot of competing interpretations. There were a lot of differing media coverages and media stories by different people. And it was difficult for me as an academic, for me as a musician and an artist to interpret it. And for politicians, very difficult to know what they should do, what actions to be taken. All right. Ooh. So what we found out, and this is in 2013, so what we found out is there are two very important things that we can take from music streaming. One is music revenues from recorded music is going up. And it's going up annually, 7, 11, 7, and it keeps going in the same size, 7 and 11%, approximately around there, year to year. And that has to be blamed on streaming. Streaming is the main reason for this. But the other thing that we also found is that the local share, the share of Norwegian music being streamed in our market dropped tremendously. And it went from being something between 25 to 30% to dropping to being 10 to 12.4%-ish. Those numbers are a little difficult. I'm going to explain a little bit about why that is. But the ballpark is Norwegian music is losing out. You know, Norwegian rights owners, Norwegian creators are losing out. Some of the challenges with the numbers, I'm just going to 2 seconds on that, because it ties a little bit with the conversations we'd had with Dugin earlier and with Gordon. Because what do we mean with local music? What do we mean with Norwegian music or Albanian music? What is that? And from an academic point of view and a political point of view, it means that the rights owners are based here in Kosovo, in Pristina. And if they're not based here, it doesn't count as Albanian or Kosovo music. And for Norway, that has been a quite big challenge because some of our bigger stars, like way back when we had anyone? Yes. They signed with a British label and they had an American management. Kygo, same thing. Alan Walker, same thing. So a lot of the major acts that we had don't come up as Norwegian music. And that's a challenge. So how do we count it? Or how do we secure some of those ownerships in our own territory? And I think that is an important issue to take along and to work with once we or you start to build a local music industry. All right. A couple of weeks ago, there was a report, a really important report that came out from the UK that kind of supports the findings that we had in 2013. And it's this one. It's the music creators' earnings in the digital age, the digital era. Group of really, really talented and really good scholars who made it. And it's a pretty big report, but one of the things that they also point to is how revenues from streaming in the UK is being redistributed. And this is one of the things that they found. And if you look at the top 0.1% of the most popular tracks achieved more than 40% of all streams. That is the streaming market. If you go to top 0.4, so we're not, it's half a percent of the top tracks add up to, or less than half, add up to 65% of all the streams in the UK during these years. And it's stable too, it's very stable, so it doesn't really change much. Which is, if you're not among that top 0.4%, that is a problem. It creates some questions and some challenges. And that is kind of what we were trying to do with the Nordgård committee and to try and figure out why this is and what can be done to change it. Which is what I'm going to try and talk a little bit about today. I think we suggested it, and the British report also suggests some of it. So I'm going to try and give you some of the inputs on that. All right, so the economic model. Music streaming is paid out through what is called a pro rata model. And pro rata only means based on market share, or your share of the market. And what they do is they put all the subscriptions, all the money from the subscription during one period of time, whether it's a month or a quarter or a year, into a pool and divide it on all streams, and that gives you a per stream price. And then they go back and they count, how many streams do you have? And then you multiply it per stream price. That's the royalty, that's the money that you get. And it seems fair, right? It's a fair redistribution of money. And what is the problem? What is the challenge with this? Well, one of the challenges is that if I'm a fan of Susanne Sundfør, she's a brilliant artist from Norway, and I spend all of my subscription time on Spotify to listen to Susanne Sundfør, and that's what I do. And I may be able to, let's say, listen to Susanne Sundfør 10 times a day, maybe 20 times a day. But that's all I do. I only listen to her. And I have her on my stereo and everything, and I listen to her. And during 1 month, if we count up the number of times I've listened to Susanne Sundfør and multiply the per streams, which is 0.00 something, then she will have, or her rights owners will have, a very small amount of the money that I paid to have access to her. And what happens to the rest of that money? And that is the challenge. It goes to, I'm picking Billie Eilish as an example because she is one big grosser of streams, but it could of course also be, Dua Lipa, who is also a very big grossing artist on streams. And one of the challenges, and I say this with the biggest respect for Dua Lipa, and She's credited to all the money that she gets, but the model means that it's difficult to build new talent, to come up and to finance it, and for someone to take risk into this. And it's definitely not her fault or Billie Eilish, but there's something with the model that doesn't necessarily work. Now, there's been propositions to change the economic model. And one of the propositions has been to go from a pro rata to a user-centric, which means that all money is being divided on whatever I listen to during 1 month. So if I listen to Susanne Sundfør one time, all the money that goes into royalty goes to her or her rights owners. So that's been one part that has been lobbied by musicians' unions, managers, and many others. It doesn't necessarily solve everything, but it might solve something. And there have been a few studies on this that is inconclusive on whether it will have an impact on local share. And on top of this, there's also a Finnish report that is also added to the inconclusiveness. And then you can ask, is it fair? I mean, one of the things that I do pay for with a streaming subscription is access to everything. So not only do I pay for what I listen to, but I should also pay for what I could listen to, what I might want to listen to in the future. So that is also, so you might want to have both. And the other option, which is also, or solution, which is also being lobbied for, is what is called a minute-based. So today, one stream is counted once and once only after 30 seconds. So if you have a track that lasts 6 minutes, that counts just as much as a track that lasts 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes. And it's being argued that perhaps we should go into a minute-based model, which is what we have for radio and for TV and for other types of licensing. All right, so that's the first proposition. The other one, we're still hanging in? Still okay? Am I talking too fast? All right, let me have a little sip of wine and I'll be a little better. Skål. All right, so the second proposition is what is called the paradox of choice. There are a lot of different authors and different people who have suggested and who have termed it in different ways. This book by Barry Schwartz, if you want to read on the paradox of choice or the tyranny of choice, it's a good read. It's easily read. He's an American psychologist, and he works on how we make choices, what type of process we go through when we make different types of choices. And his core argument is that there's a tipping point when having too many options becomes a hinder, it becomes a problem. And that tipping point is not really that much. So the argument is, if we go from having, let's say, one option to having 3 options, then your choice range increases dramatically from really not having any choice to having a choice. When you go from having 3 options to 10 options, the choice range keeps increasing. But when you go from having 10 options, fantastic. 10 options to 1,000 options. Then the problem is that the time and resources needed to actually go through all the different options and to weigh them against each other and to make a rational choice becomes too demanding. And what he says is, what we do as human beings is we do one of 2 things. One is that we look for familiarities. We look for things we've seen before. And the other one is we choose not to choose. We withdraw from the process. And they tested this. They have an experiment in the book, and they set up a bunch of different booths in American shopping malls where you could buy jam, and you could test jam. And they had one type of booth where they had only 6 flavors, and they had another type of booth that had 24 flavors. And just by going from 6 flavors to 24 flavors, the amount of customers that actually ended up buying went from, 30% to 3%. So it had a dramatic effect just by going from 24 to 6. So why is this important? Well, in a music business sense, you can tie both of those things very brilliantly to how music business works. One is marketing, 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 brand recognition, name recognition. That is something that has a tremendous effect in a market of abundance, of multiple titles. The other one is playlists. We choose not to choose. We give our trust into someone else to provide the taste for us, which is what we're seeing with Spotify, how playlists are just becoming more and more important in how, subscribers and fans go through the extreme catalog of music that they offer. There are some challenges with this too. And one of the challenges, and this is one of the things that I've been working very closely with these last couple of years. The playlisting or the curational system that Spotify builds up is more and more becoming an inventory of Spotify than a curational system that they have for their subscribers. And they build what is called the syndicates. I'm not entirely sure if you're familiar with this, but they have a top line of playlists like Rap Caviar, which are, I think they have, 10 million followers. So a huge amount of potential listeners if you do get your track into it. And then they have different, like a pyramid, different other types of playlists that feed into that playlist, to Rap Caviar. And it follows a very intricate system. And of course, being put into any of those feeder systems that might eventually lead up to Rap Caviar becomes extremely important. And controlling that route becomes even more so. The challenge is that more and more of the process within the Spotify system with those playlists are becoming less and less accessible and less transparent. And unlike much of what happened with radio, where you would know who made that decision, it's becoming more and more difficult to do so in the digital streaming system. The other one is with algorithms. And it has to do with how the system picks out which music you could or should listen to if you have listened to something else. So the algorithms the algorithms of Spotify is very much dependent on the metadata and the user behavior of their subscribers. I've been doing two projects lately. And one was that I've been interviewing different independent label managers on how they deal with music streaming. And one of them that I've been working with and interviewing, he runs a small Norwegian label that has a lot of club tracks, electronic music internationally, and he does a lot of really well-acclaimed music. And he did a release with a DJ, and the DJ had a huge international star appearing in one of the tracks, did a feature. And she went to Spotify headquarters and said, all right, this track is important. And she knew everyone in Spotify headquarters, and she said, so you guys have to push this. You have to put this in the important playlist, and you have to help me support it. And Spotify headquarters were super happy about this. Put it on a really, really important list. And my friend and the manager whom I interviewed was looking at the stats the first week, and he was super happy. He said, wow, hundreds of thousands of streams on a daily basis. And he was very excited about it. And then all of a sudden, the week after, everything was gone. It just dropped completely. It went from hundreds of thousands of streams per day to nothing, like tens tops. And he went back to Spotify, and he asked, why did this happen? All you guys support this, and all of you guys wanted this to happen. And what happened is that since this is a club track, it's 6 minutes long, and it has half a minute of an outro for DJs to mix. And the outro is enough for people to skip. So when they skip, the skipping rate goes up, and the track goes out. And the algorithms can't separate whether it's a skip after listening 6 minutes straight, or if it's a skip 12 seconds into the song. Don't separate. And the problem for him is that by then, the track is gone, it's dead. And to revive it in that system, because the algorithms keep that data, is close to impossible. So that was a big challenge. The other example I'm going to give is, I've also worked with a Norwegian management, on another research project. And we've been trying to figure out how to get the artist who already has a significant market in the US, and they want to increase that market. And we're trying to figure out how to work with algorithms and playlists to increase the market in the US, or the market share. And one of the challenges that we found is that the similar artists, the artists that she would be likely to be linked with through Spotify's system, either because they sound like, and even because they work together, they've cooperated. When we look at the statistics, they are not linked. So the Norwegian artist is not linked to the American artist that they've cooperated with, or they're even on the same label in the US. And we try to figure out why that is. And one of the things that we found out is that the Norwegian artist has a geotag that says Norwegian indie pop. It's not indie pop or pop, it's Norwegian indie pop. And we asked the manager, did you put that in? Because that's making it very difficult, because the algorithms ties that to a Norwegian market instead of a US market. And he said, I didn't put that in. And he called the American label, and they say, we didn't put that in. So we didn't, and the artist definitely didn't put that in. And so it turns out that Spotify puts it in to help, to help guide listeners through a geo system that they think is valuable or important. The challenge, of course, is that the result is that it's extremely difficult to get into a huge market such as the US. Because figure out what? One of the few markets that don't have a geotag is the US. So if you make hip-hop in Denmark, or in Germany, or in France, it's called French hip-hop, or Danish hip-hop, or German hip-hop, or Albanian hip-hop. But in the US, it's called hip-hop. And it has a tremendous market effect, and securing that market from outsiders. And I think this is one of the things that is being more and more looked into, and especially what type of metadata that has an important value on, from Spotify, but also from listeners and subscribers. All right, so the third, and I think, to be honest, I think this is one of the more important questions to be raised. Give me 2 seconds. I forgot how warm that lamp is. Jesus. It's like being on the beach. All right, so ARPU. This is very important. Average revenue per user. So I'm a music fan. I'm guessing you guys, all of you guys are. In the 90s, I was DJing too. I've been a DJ, but I'm going to say that because I know almost everyone here have been DJs or are DJs. So but I was also a DJ, and I used to spend a lot of money on music, on record music, physical, CDs, vinyl, everything. And I used to buy blindly. I used to follow artists. I used to follow labels. I used to follow different things. If they release anything, I would buy it, surely. And so I think my monthly spending when I was in my late teens, beginning of my 20s, was I would easily buy 10, 15 albums a month, approximately. So my spending was that 150 euros, approximately. 1,500 euros. No, sorry, 150 euros-ish. 150 to 200 euros a month. That was my monthly spending on record music. My siblings would buy, let's say, 2 albums a year, 3 albums a year. They could borrow my music, of course, so that was one of the problems. But my parents, they had stopped buying music. They had their vinyl collection and their CD collection. You know, they had all their Neil Youngs and Bob Dylans and all the others, and they would listen to that. So they didn't buy much music at all. So let's say that my parents' consumption pattern would be 1 album a year, approximately. Now, when all of us have subscriptions to Spotify, what happens is that my spending is capped at 100 or 10 euros a month. So my spending went from 150 to 10 euros. My siblings went from having, let's say, 2.5 euro a month to 10 euros a month. And my parents went from having none at all to having 10 euros a month. And what's interesting about this is that I represent, and I assume you represent, the breadth of genres, the testing, the stranger music. And my siblings and my parents, they represent the top 10 or the hits and the legacy acts, etc., etc. And I think if we can figure out how to allow people like me and probably people like you to pay more for recorded music, it's going to be difficult to have a significant impact on the broader types of releases. And I think I'm going to try and wrap this up, because I think this is where one of the solutions lies. And I think, and I have to say, I sometimes end up being the streaming basher, the negative person on music streaming, which I'm not entirely. I love music streaming, but I think this is the first generation of something new, and it will have to adapt in a certain extent. And I think this is one of many things that will have to change. And I think the value proposition has to be in there, and we'll probably also see a tier level pricing system where a curational offer is tied with a higher price in some ways, which is not really unheard of, because we already see this in some services. And this company, Idagio, which deals with classical music, they have a different system simply because classic music audience have a different system of looking for music. So it's not the title of the song, it's not the length of the song. It may be the orchestra or the concert hall or the conductor or something entirely else that guides the fan or the subscriber. And Idagio has tried to cater for that, but also to price according to that. And I think what we'll probably see in the future is that more and more of the streaming services will try and cater for a more specialized audience who are into a specialized type of music and who are willing and able to pay more. And I think that is probably where we're heading if I were to look into the future. And that is ending on a positive note. So I say thank you. And if you want to reach out, please do. I've been fortunate to have a lot of Albanian students taking our master's program in music business and management, which has been really good, and I love to see more Albanian students in the future. So, yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer. And while you do the sound check, can we turn that off now that I don't have? Is that possible? Maybe I could just. Oh, fantastic! Yes.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I think since we don't have a streaming service of our own, everyone's either, especially here, everyone's either on YouTube because Spotify is not available in this region. It's not something. It's not surprising because we don't have access to a lot of things. They don't let us move, let alone let us use their stuff. So, what do you? Two questions actually. What do you think should be the next steps, or what should be the way to skew away from these platforms that, like you pointed out earlier, 0.1%, 40% goes to 0.1% of the, is that down to a taste, in a sense, they go to that, or does the algorithm, must the algorithm change? What should happen to decentralize or redistribute sound to people? Not on the economic side, just sound to people. What should it do? Should it be I don't know. Should the algorithm be situated around geographical, or what should we do?
Well, first of all, I think
What can we do?
everything that I talked about now applies to all the music streaming services, including YouTube. So because they work, if you don't look past, well, actually the algorithm system too, but YouTube don't have the same type of playlist system that Spotify has, but the system applies to all of it, the redistribution of money. Well, what I think is, first of all, Spotify's offer is to pay 10 euros to have access to, 40 million tracks, and there's an additional 50,000 tracks coming in on a weekly basis, more or less. And the question is, do we need a system that has to cater for all of it, or will we have another system that has... There are a lot of challenges. This is what I'm doing all my research on right now, which is that having 40 million tracks has a tremendous structural cost side for Spotify, the streaming services, but everyone else, including collecting societies, rights owners, and rights systems, et cetera, just to make sure that no one gets sued along the way. And so it has a tremendous cost side that is not necessarily effective in a way. And what could happen is that you'll have a tier-level licensing system too. So you might have a blanket license system for a part of the usage, and you'll have a different type of licensing system for a more active type of use, or a more selective type of catalog, might be. For instance, all the tracks on Spotify, I saw there were some stats on how many tracks on Spotify that were never listened to at all. And it's more than 50% on music available on Spotify has never, ever been accessed at all. And I think if you add in the additional music that has been listened to more than, less than 10 times in their entire life, then you have an additional 20 or 30%. So the question is, so you have a system that is built up on rights owners that are not really rights owners. There's music or who are not really active rights owners. But they have a cost side that all of us, all the people who have some catalog in Spotify or somewhere else, pays for and covers. So that is one, so we might see a different licensing system. I think this is one of my dreams actually, one of the things that I'm really working on. I think metadata needs to be better. Right now, the metadata that Spotify relies on is based on Spotify's needs and Spotify's system. So it's based on, weekdays. It's based on in what type of situation you like to listen to music. It's based on different types of things than what a music fan might be interested in, which might be the producer or the studio or the session musician, or it might be something entirely else. But I think maybe we'll see a new generation of metadata, which makes it easier to push music that is relevant for a certain type of, or a non-top artist or international hits-oriented audience. Is that kind of, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Question there? Oh.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. It was very useful for me. Well, perhaps I'm digressing a bit from the main topic, but it's still like it's connected somehow. Because I just want to know what's the from Norwegian perspective. Because I'm coming from a place where people usually don't read musical reviews. Yes, and I believe like a certain and considerable amount of people do have specific requests from what they read, what is in the market, what's fresh, what's requested, and what's the idea like in Norway? Because I believe there is a review and media industry that is like quite developed already. And what's the idea like how many people and what's the approximate percentage of people who make the requests for streaming by reading reviews, and basically this is somehow a hooked up system, because if you're hooked up in some like positive review for a band or for a DJ, you will be constantly looking up for it in a streaming platforms.
I haven't seen stats on it. To be honest, I don't think the Norwegian media system is any more mature than most other, probably including yours. But there were two things that happened at the same time you have to remember. One thing is that the music industry got struck by digitalization and by tremendous turmoil in the turn of the century or millennium. But the same thing happened with the media, right? With news, and they also fired people, and one of the first, some of the first people to be fired from news media were the cultural department and the ones who did the reviews, and I think so for 10-15 years, I think those two things made an impact that reviews, professional reviews, more or less disappeared. And I think academically and politically, there was an optimism on how social media and democratization of now every voice could be heard, and now other people like fans could give reviews, and fans would rather follow their friends and what they had. So it was considered to be obsolete in many ways. And I think now we see that is not the case, and there is more money being put into media. And now in Norway, we see reviews are back. Not as big as before, but reviews are back. And more importantly is that reviews are back with a link to the track. So that means that you can now track whether the reviews actually lead to consumption or to followers or someone who tests it out. But I think this is at a very early stage, and it's going to keep developing more and more. But it is changing positively, I think. But I haven't seen any stats. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why I said like I'm digressing a bit from the main topic, but I believe like the media do not somehow like promote that 0.1% on your charts. Thanks.
Thanks. There's one in the back there too, and then I'm getting the and that's not because I'm speaking too fast. No, it's yeah.
You're doing fine.
All right, last question, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it was very interesting. You got me thinking when you explained the situation that when you were younger, you were spending 150 euros a month, let's say. And that, on the contrary, your parents would almost spend almost nothing. And I was thinking by myself, well, that's great. Now with streaming, everybody is paying more or less the same. Because it makes sense. As a young person, you have a lower salary, or even if you are a student, you're doing a lot of research on music because maybe you're looking for your identity. You're promoting the smaller artists among each other. So you're putting a lot of effort in it. While maybe as, I don't want to say your parents, let's say my parents would just want to consume. And in that sense, they have no problem to pay 10 euros a month for Spotify. and they contribute in a financial way. So my reflection was that maybe that is an opportunity that everybody pays a certain amount. I think the problem is not that you should pay more if you listen more to it, because if you invest more time in searching for the real artist, in using it as a research tool, you're actually also contributing to the music industry as you are putting time in it. So I don't think you necessarily have to pay more for it. So I think that the financial model is okay, but right now Spotify only has a commercial mode, a mode that is based on consumerism. But if you would have different modes, like you have that on motorcycles, for example, that you have an off-road mode and you have a race mode, or on cars, maybe on Spotify that should be the future as well, that you say, I want an easy mode. I don't want to choose between all those millions of options. I want just the daily mix. But for professionals, for example, people that are researching in the music industry, there is a different mode that leads to research.
I think you're absolutely right, and you're raising an important point. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to have people or everyone pay more money, not at all, and that's not my suggestion. But I think we could be more creative in finding ways to make the audience and the fans support in many times of ways, many different ways. The music and the artists that they follow. But I think also there should be a way to also allow for more money to be spent. And there was an example with the Norwegian streaming company called WIMP, which when they figured out that WIMP does not work very well in English, it was rebranded as Tidal. And Tidal is the same company as Jay-Z bought, together with Beyonce and some others. And they did try to have a tier-level pricing system where they had an offer for lossless system, for hi-fi, where they had 100% increase in the price. So it went from being 10 euros a month to 20 euros a month. Didn't really work. And the shame is that what Tidal was really good at was the editorial thing. They did reviews, and they did a really good editorial piece of work, but they didn't consider that to be important enough to include it in a tier level price, which is strange. But they thought the technical thing of a lossless system was important enough, and it didn't work. And it's a shame that they didn't try the editorial approach, because that would probably be better off. But I agree. The point is not to have more money from subscribers, but to find a way to distribute it more evenly. Yeah. All right. I think I'm totally getting. I think they're shutting the lights on me pretty soon. So thank you very much.